Okay, where we at?
I'm recording you. What's what's that noise when you do when you do it like
what
that?
I was thinking about?
What's that? What were you thinking about?
I like the Brazilian music, the samba thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they have the cuica, you know.
Oh, cuica.
And I was trying to make a fake cuica.
That's all rather interesting. If you can, yes.
Oh.
Back to when you were 8.
Okay, let's
moving back in the time.
let's get serious again.
Yes.
We're up to and involved with the second reading of another book out of the Pan-African Occult genre.
Yes.
And I want to give a brief explanation about what I mean by that, because the question has been asked, you know, what is that? I'm saying because I've submitted novels, I've submitted material to Eurocentrically oriented publishing houses. I've had real problems when they say things like, check the genre that your material fits. And usually we just go on and say, you know, urban fiction to make things easier. But I got tired of that. I thought, you know, this is not urban fiction. You know, some of it is, but a lot of it is not. So I call it, it's a self-styled designation. And what I mean by that Pan-African occult is that I'm taking what I think are spiritual elements from all over the African world, starting at home and then into the diaspora, to the islands, to North and South America, Central America. We saw a program this afternoon about a sister who was giving us a little travel tour of people of African descent in Costa Rica. I thought that was the whitest Central American country in the whole chain. Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and so forth and so on. And one of the people in the documentary, very short, about half an hour I think, was a dance teacher, and she was explaining that people of African descent in Costa Rica, like people everywhere else of African descent, should be proud and aware of who they are. So, as a novelist, I've made it my business to take time to write some books, not all, but some books in what I call the Pan-African occult. I'm saying the Pan-African occult differs from the Eurocentric occult in that we don't have zombies and werewolves and Frankensteins and so forth coming out of our Africanity. You know, so
yes.
Having said that,
yes, please.
I'm going to take us now into chapter 2.
All right.
It's fun to get back to work, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We had a whole day off. after reading, what was the title of this book?
The Snake Doctor.
The Snake Doctor, of course.
Right.
Wow, you got a good
All
one.
about the snake. In fact, you could do a sequel on the Snake Doctor if you like, but moving right along
Yes.
to Shackles Across Time.
Chapter 2. This is the first chapter.
The cover?
It starts off with a jog.
Shackles Across Time.
Oh, Shackles Across Time.
Yes, there it is. Shackles Across Time. All right. Go ahead.
The brother's name is Quinn. And he runs in the morning. He does his exercises.
This is jogging.
His name is Robert Quinn. And if you live in Chicago, for those who live in Chicago, follow me on this route. He lives in Rogers Park and about two blocks from the lakefront, Lake Michigan. So he runs down the outer drive along the lakefront, beautiful run, to the Drake Hotel, makes a circle right there at Oak Street Beach, and goes back up to Rogers Park. I don't know how many miles that is, but it's a nice number, maybe 5 or 6 miles. And that's what he does every day. And he's the sort of guy who does things like think while he runs, like some people think while they drive. And I'm using it as a device to introduce us to his family that he's thinking about as he finishes up his jog. There's his wife, Dinah, who's doing her yoga while he runs. He has 2 sons, Kofi and Kwame, and a very troublesome daughter named Bella. And having said that, I will go into chapter 2 to find out what's happening. Glasses on?
Off.
Irma, we can discuss this when I get to the office, okay? He stopped talking on his hands-free phone, smiling after a brief conversation with his secretary, the woman his office manager had nicknamed the brutally efficient Mrs. Irma Sims. Thank God, we got some different places. Probably one of the worst mistakes I ever made in my life was to give Miss Sims my cell phone number.
Businessman.
She called to remind him of meetings. She called to check on the proper tone of the letter she was typing. The proper plant to be displayed in the office lobby. She called. Damn, I wish I had 2 of her. Bumper to bumper traffic. He stared at Buckingham Fountain on his right. Lots of stuff is going on around that fountain. The lakefront looked cool and inviting, with all of the small boats bobbing at anchor to his left. We ought to get a boat. Yeah, I think I'll buy some boat. Be nice to sell out on the lake, you know. 9:10 a.m. 9:10 a.m. Mrs. Sims was there, of course, and the rest of the staff would be easing in, tea and coffee cups at port arms. Robert Quinn Products and Company. Beautiful projects, beautiful products for the woman of color. What do we call them? Frogs in your throat? You feel something?
Yes.
Robert Quinn Products and Company. Beautiful products for the woman of color. Nothing like success. Nothing. What's the saying? I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better. He curled onto the museum off-ramp, heading for his Hyde Park office. Monday morning, 9:15 a.m. Morning, everybody. Hope y'all had a good weekend. Morning, Bob. Hi, Bob. Morning, Mr. Quinn. I have some faxes for you to look at. I'll be right with you, Miss Sims. First, let me get a cup of this delicious mint tea. I've already placed a thermos of hot water on your desk. Thank you, Mrs. Sims. Have we decided on the new ads yet? Not yet. They've been narrowed down from 10 to 6. I'm afraid you'll have to choose 3 we'll be using. No problem. One more thing, Mr. Quinn. Yes, Miss Sims? I received affirmations for your family reunion from Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Quarles of Augusta, Georgia, and Mr. and Mrs. Frank Johnson of Los Angeles. The Quarles will be bringing a party of 7, and the Johnsons will total 5. 12 people. Why shouldn't we have we shouldn't have any problems for a 3-day reunion. I've already made arrangements for their accommodations at the Hyde Parker. Great. They have a nice lounge and a great restaurant there. What's the date on that? The reunion is scheduled for July 4th, 5th, and 6th. Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. Mrs. Sims flashed an efficient smile in his direction and marched back to her office to take care of other business. He strolled into his office, used hot water from the thermos to make a cup of mint tea, sat at his desk, The natives are becoming restless.
Yes, they are. It's October, not July.
Ah.
Okay, go figure.
Okay. Just so long as we know what we're up against here.
Yes, sir.
He strolled into his office, used hot water from the thermos to make a cup of mint tea, sat at his desk sipping the tea meditatively, glancing beyond the glass wall of his office at his staff. Robert, when you're going into business for yourself, you got to do 3 things. Make sure you're in the right business, hire extremely competent people, and finally, pay them well. Do these 3 things and you'll have a successful operation. Great advice. Thank you, Dad. He slid his eyes up and down the aisles of desks. 50 people humming, working as though the business belonged to them. It did belong to them, in a manner of speaking. They held shares and a vested interest in the success of the company, and it was definitely a successful company. Mr. Quinn? Yes, Miss Simmons. I just want to remind you of your lunch date with the Morgan people at 12:30. Thanks, Miss Sim. By the way, did you say that we received confirmations from only 2 of the families? 2 families. With your family, that would be a total of 17 people. And we sent out 15 invitations. I wonder why so few of them responded. The 15 would have taken care of family members, so there would be much more than just 17.
Right.
I wonder why so few of them responded. I would hate to begin to try to put the reasons together. Some may have lacked the means to attend a reunion. Others may have simply been uninterested. Some may have thought it was a gimmick of some sort. Who can say? Yeah, I can see your point. Lunch with the Morgans at 12:30. If you're very busy, I'll remind you at 11:45. Once again, she marched away. An excellent executive secretary. She feeds fuel to the position. He sipped the tea and started into his day, plowing through a list of people to be called, a half-dozen papers to be scrutinized and signed, answers to be supplied for questions asked, and money to be made. The idea for a reunion had popped into his head one morning while he was jogging. He had found out about a distant African ancestor named Quartet by having his genealogical chart done by the Mormons in Salt Lake City, Utah. You believe this? I gotta go to a bunch of weird-ass white folks in Utah to find out something about my family's history? Count your blessings.
Amen.
The notion of being the direct descendant of an African slave trader, a Gar tribesman named Quartet, played with his head for weeks. He flew back to Utah to find out if there were other direct descendants. He was able to locate 5 families in the U.S. The rest were living in Barbados, Trinidad, and Brazil, the diaspora. The 3 families who had agreed to the meeting reunion are all Americans. He wasn't absolutely certain of his reason for wanting to have them together, other than to say he had made it possible for the extended relatives to know each other. Robert, you know, there's one thing I've always loved about you. What's that, baby? Your lack of egotism. They joked about it, had fun with the idea of getting together with his distant relatives. This is such a complex piece of business, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I got relatives all over the place, but they're not all direct descendants. Suppose we hate each other. Talk about diaspora. I got some diaspora for you. Hell, I guess it should be called a union because we've never met before. No matter. The important thing is we're going to get together and compare life experiences, look each other in the face, and see what's what. Mr. Quinn, it's 11:45. Remember your meeting is scheduled for 12:30. Where are we doing lunch? They suggested Rosa's, the Italian place, and you agreed. Right, Rosa's it is. Ought to be fun. Getting together with a collection of white men and women who want to take over my business. What could be more interesting? Professor Johnson Are you really saying what I think you're saying? He welcomed the laughter. There was nothing worse than a humorless group of young people. Well, what I'm asking you, I guess, is why we can't pick up any history book in the library and read about the people you're talking about. Professor Frank Johnson resisted the urge to say something sarcastic. What good would it serve? Willie, let me be perfectly honest with you, okay? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The place we were born and bred in, these United States of America, is so profoundly racist that there are some things you will never read in any of our so-called history books. Sheila, the beige-skinned, super Afrocentric, called out, well, hey, if that's the case, what's the point of us learning all of this history if it's not relevant to who we are as a people? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Professor Johnson stared out of the window at the sun's merciless rays. Los Angeles could be so hot and so cold at the same time.
Mm.
The air-conditioned room suddenly felt hot. What the hell can I say to this young woman's completely sensible question? Sheila, we were shipped over here like sacks of grain or something. We went through the whole thing in 101. Remember? And I think if you took notes, I said that the only value in knowing something about the people who enslaved our ancestors was to know who they were, to understand something of the psyche that would reduce another human being to chattel slavery. If you listen closely to what I'm saying about the Africans, you'll learn something unique, not irrelevant. Professor Johnson, you're a tenured member of this establishment. What are you saying? A sullen smirk from the class clown, the guy who never turned his papers in on time and didn't seem to care. Samuels, you're the star offensive left tackle here. What is it that I'm saying? It wasn't difficult to put the students down. The real problem was how to keep them up and tell the truth at the same time. African American History 103 was a socio-psycho minefield. During the course of the 10 years he had been teaching the course, he had blown himself up at least a dozen times. A number of right-wing, fashion-minded white students had circulated a cleverly designed racist petition during his first year to have him fired. He had been accused of fomenting racial conflict by conservative African American students and so-called liberal whites. A number of the teaching faculty pretended that he wasn't really qualified to be teaching something called African American history. Oh, come on, Frank. Why don't you just simply admit African American history is simply a darker version of American history? Man, the incredibly stupid statement you just made tells me that African American history is absolutely essential for my survival, as well as yours. Huh? He had learned how to go with the flow, to duck and dodge, circle around, sometimes go through opposition, but there were times when he felt exhausted by the efforts he had to make. He had two allies. Strangely, one of them was the president of Turner College, Dr. Charles Flintstone Turner, a crusty, that's what they call him, Flintstone. A crusty, hard-grained old white guy with fierce blue eyes and a wide-open mind.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the little bastards get to you, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know their asses from a hole in the ground. Mm-hmm. It'll be some time for most of them before they discover the difference. How about a tot of brandy?
Uh-huh.
Thank you, sir, but I have another class to teach. I'll take a rain check. No problem. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
You know something, Frank? When I was growing up in Mississippi, even the so-called liberal whites called African Americans niggers as a matter of course. Think nothing about it, thought nothing about it. I didn't give a hell of a lot of thought myself until I was in my teens. Then one day, for some reason, I asked myself, who in the hell are these niggers? Where the hell did they come from? Now, don't misunderstand me. My best friend wasn't black, Negro back then, and my people weren't educated, anything like that. It was just an intuitional thing, I think. I started doing a lot of reading, and what I discovered damn near blew me away. In many ways, I felt that what I was learning about your story was a hell of a lot more interesting than our story, if you know what I mean. I think I do. In any case, after my destiny led me to this chair, I was bound and determined that I would be involved with a serious exchange of information about who we are. If I had my druthers, I'd make African American history mandatory for every white student going to Turner. You can't say you know a lot about the American psyche if you don't know about the history of the Native Americans and the Africans in this land of ours. I'm saying all this to say I hired the best teacher I could find, you, to do a difficult job. You're doing it, and I'm behind you 1,000%. Of course, the African was in America before Columbus blundered into the Caribbean. Of course, the origin of man, womankind occurred in Africa, of course. Sir, sorry to interrupt you, but I have a class to teach in 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, Frank. I didn't mean to start ranting and raving, but it just burns me up to see we're still subscribing to the same old Euro nonsense in the 21st century. I agree, and thanks for your support. Just one more thing. What's that? If I found out you were sleeping with one of these little white girls, I'd tell your wife on you. Yes, he had two great allies on the campus of Turner College. His wife Mary and Dr. Turner, the great-grandson of the founder of the college. And then what did he say? He said, if I found out you were sleeping with one of these little white girls, I'd tell your wife on you.
Too cute.
Mary Quist Johnson studied her husband's humorous expression with mock serenity on her brow. What's so funny about that? Well, you know, it just seems so puritanical that he would think like that in those terms. Mary Quist Johnson eased up a bit, enjoying the exchange. Yeah, I know what you mean. He surprises me at times, too. He stopped me in the lower level corridor yesterday and asked me if there were any musical instruments that were considered aphrodisiacal. What'd you tell him? I thought on it for a quick minute and told him that music itself is considered aphrodisiacal by some cultures, in some societies. Got to give it to him. He poses the kind of questions that turn this ethnomusicologist on. I can dig where you're coming from. You want another glass of wine? Yeah, I'm in a Bordeaux mood tonight. She poured both of them glasses of wine and resettled herself beside him on their sun deck. Life is good. They acknowledged with casual smiles to each other. An ethnomusicologist and a history teacher whose specialty is African American history. Sometimes controversial, but respected academics with credentials to prove it. And they had the extraordinarily good fortune to be teaching in the same college. The pay was tops. President Turner's stipulation, hire extremely competent people and pay them well. It was almost a revolutionary idea, paying teachers a decent salary.
Yes.
Once again, President Charles F. Flintstone, Turner's admonition, we separated enough families during slavery time. Why continue to do it now? Mrs. Quist Johnson is one of the top ethnomusicologists in the country, and you're one of the top African American history teachers. Why separate you guys? But, sir, you don't have a department of ethnomusicology. Yes, we do. And Mrs. Quist Johnson is the department head.
Okay.
That old man is something else, you know that? You better believe it. What could be better? They had stimulating work to do in an exciting intellectual environment, a lovely home, and at 40 years young, 3 children. They sprawled in their deck chairs, the Mandeville Canyon house surrounding them, watching the sun go down over their goblets of Côte du Rhône, a favorite ritual. After sundown, they would go inside to the library to exchange monosyllabic comments as they worked on their various projects and school assignments. Where are the people? They had coined a new title for their trio: Donald Johnson, Quist Johnson, the 18-year-old novelist. The novel is my form. I knew it the minute I picked up Richard Wright, Black Boy. Gojo, the martial artist. Look, let me tell you guys something right now. Capoeira is the African-Brazilian martial art that's going to be the martial art of the 21st century. You know how I know? Because it comes from the place where our ancestors come from. And our ancestors, whether they like it or not, have given birth to movements that the world must acknowledge. Capoeira is one of those movements. And Tubula. Where are the people? It's very interesting, Frank. I'm spending as much time at school as you are, but you ask me where your cufflinks are, or your silk socks. They shared smiles. It was another one of their humorous crossroads. Don't ask me how I came across this information, but I'd share it with you, okay? Yes, dear. The sun was sinking past the mountains, the banisters of the sun deck. Well, as you would suspect, Donald, alias Richard Wright II, is upstairs in his room, secretly nursing a bottle of scotch and trying to find his way through his second chapter of The Real Gone with the Wind. I guess we should feel grateful he was drinking at home. They simultaneously held up their goblets for an unspoken toast. Kojo, of course, is somewhere deep in the hood we call Wak, trying to teach some hard-headed little black children that they are the beginning and ending of martial arts. The sun slipped below the horizon as though it had been swallowed by a giant mouth. And Tabula? She shook her head from side to side as though she was trying to shake a bad thought out of her head. I have no idea what Tabula is. Do you? He shook his head too, at a slower tempo. No, I don't have the slightest. They were silent for a few long moments, sipping their wine, feeling depressed. He could feel her crying in the darkness and reached over to hold her hand. They held hands, not speaking but exchanging feelings. Well, that's enough of that, he announced after a proper interval, stood to stretch the kinks out. You come in now? She dried her eyes. In a bit, I want to think a little while. He bent over to give her a kiss, spraying a little wine from his mouth into her mouth. What does that mean? If you're in bed before midnight, you can find out.
Nice.
The code was on. They understood each other well enough to know what he was not saying. I'll definitely be in bed before midnight. Frank made another extravagant yawn and gave his wife another lascivious kiss before leaving her on the sun deck. Mary Quist Johnson stared at the distant hills, trying to pull herself together. Damn. Of all things to have a nymphomaniac daughter. The Norwegian psychiatrist had been quite explicit. Your daughter is suffering from nymphomania. Nymphomania? What the hell does that mean? Mom, don't try to bury your head in the sand. A nymphomaniac is somebody who would screw anybody, everybody. Kojo, the martial artist, put it in less delicate terms. She's the neighborhood dip. And when she goes outside into the community at large, she's a community dip. It would be hard to figure out what we should call her if she went international. A nymphomaniac. God, what did we do to have such a thing put on us? She poured herself another goblet of wine and leaned back to stare at the moon and the stars. A nymphomaniac. Boys and men calling up at all hours of the day and night. Tabula, you're only 16 years old. Why would you have a 50-year-old man calling you? Oh, Mom, don't be so old-fashioned. Who says that 16-year-old girls shouldn't have older friends? Aren't you and Daddy friendly with people younger than yourselves? There's a difference. Our relationship with younger people is strictly academic. So you say that to say what? They had caught her having sex with the mailman. The man from the Department of Water and Power. A succession of neighborhood boys of all races and types. A friend of theirs. She seduced me. I'm sorry this happened. I'm not what you're calling me. I'm not. We're not calling you anything. We just want you to know you could get AIDS. Don't you know that? She had been infected with gonorrhea 6 times in the past 2 years. Tabula, for God's sake, use a condom. They felt it was only a matter of time before she got herpes at least, and then AIDS. They couldn't figure out why she hadn't gotten pregnant. Maybe she's having abortions. The stars seemed to be twinkling in Mary Quist Johnson's face, creating an aura that was both beautiful and mocking. She tried to imagine what it would feel like to pull her clothes off and get in bed with any man who wanted her. The thought made her shiver with shame. She'd only been sexual with 4 men in her life, and Frank was the 4th. What can we do with her? What can we do for her? The thought nagged her. What can we do? Oh my God. Why do we have to suffer the pain of having a burden like this? She swallowed her wine in one long gulp. What the hell? I can't solve all the problems we have in one evening. So much to live for, so many good things happening. The reunion in Chicago in July. Frank teased Mary about it. Do you actually mean to tell me that I'm married to a direct descendant of a slave trader? Now I can begin to understand a whole bunch of stuff. Well, Mr. Johnson, aside from what you think you might understand, I would like to suggest that it's the psycho-catalyst for my interest in ethnomusicology. It should be interesting and it's come here just the right time. I think we need a break. Her thoughts were interrupted by a car screeching out of their driveway, and minutes later the front door being quietly opened and closed. Tabula's home. Well, there goes Frank's midnight love scene. And that's chapter 2.
Wow. Bit on the rough side, are we?
It's not all quite a downer,
Yeah.
but to be truthful, there will be a lot of down in it because
yes.
it's
Pan-African Occult.
It's a Pan-African Occult.
This is
the
true.
rocky moments.
Yes. Wow.
Rocky moments.
Well, thank you for reading that with those Shun colors.
Oh, I'd like to thank you, Zola Salena, for the really incredibly specific, historically accurate drawing.
Africa with a clock in it and the many flags.
I like the clock.
Grandfather's clock.
Yeah, Shackles Across Time, and the shackles all around Africa. That was a beautiful piece.
Thank you very
Beautiful
much.
moment there. I like that.
All right. Why, thank you. And your book can be purchased on Amazon, Author House, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore. Just go in and say, I want a copy of Shackles Across Time by Odie Hawkins. Your website is www.odiehawkins.com. If you enjoy the readings of this YouTube channel, please hit the like button below and subscribe. Thank you very much. We look forward to the next reading of Shackles Across Time.
Almost the same time.
Almost the same time.
Almost the same time, Alfred.
Yes.
So,
and Val and Susan.
Watch out with that apple juice.
And Kojo. And the apple juice. And James. I say. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.